Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you as ever from the beautiful beaches of the last free state in America, Florida. Joining me today in the Messy Time Studios is William Stroock, an author and put upon dad and general gentleman overall, who I have come to know literarily on Substack. And I'm delighted that he has taken the time to join us today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you.
So much to talk about. What
Yeah.
is kind of top of mind? I started actually one of your books really interesting like that. I'm looking forward to more. But I think a lot of topical today. I hear there's an election happening. I've heard something about that.
That's what they say, yeah.
That's what they say. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on the calamity of one win versus the joy of another win? Or not to
Um,
front load the question.
well, after a couple of decades now of following elections really closely, I'm very jaded and cynical, and I don't let myself get optimistic. I try not to. And one thing I've learned is no one really knows what's going to happen. And, if you told me, in 2022, we all know what happened. Red wave turned into a red trickle. I think there were some very good reasons for that. I think probably the great sorting was one of them. A lot of people are moving out of, northern states to southern states, and there were some bad candidates. It was probably Trump's lowest moment in the last 4 years, actually, when people he picked like Kerry Lake and Herschel Walker just didn't get it done.
Yeah, I remember watching that too, thinking it just so painful. My headache has been for years that the political class is one, and by which I mean, for example, when New York City went to the polls to elect Bill de Blasio, 11% of registered voters bothered to vote.
Yeah,
Right? The politicians and the bureaucrats win when they have made government both insanely boring and insanely complex,
yeah,
because that's a barrier to anyone trying to
yeah,
get to know what's going on. They just throw their hands up and say, whatever, and which
yeah,
lets them run rampant, which they have done.
yeah. That's and I'm sure you know of him well, a very Mark Steinian analysis of what's going on when, the two parties have decided, well, there's nothing really to debate on all the issues that matter. We've got a left party and a just barely right of center party, and I'm more or less plagiarizing the poor man right
Yeah,
now. Everything that's happened to him the last few years. I'm sure most viewers
yeah.
do. And so, where we are now, as far as the election goes, and there's no reason to feel comfortable if you're supporting Trump, and obviously I hope he wins. There's a lot of really good indicators. You can doom scroll Twitter to see a lot of very enthusiastic Republican poll analyzers who say, "Oh, things are looking really good," and it's not that they're wrong. The numbers are the numbers, but God, I feel, how during the Civil War, the Army of the Potomac, like Lee, just got in their head. And the
Yes.
first thing Grant had to do was, we're not going to worry about what Robert Lee Lee's going to do. I'm going to worry about what I'm going to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's sort of where we're at. What are Hillary's campaigning in Florida this week. What are we not seeing? What are we missing?
It's a good question. I mean, I watched last time where I think 2020 was a signal low in the American experiment. The Trump derangement syndrome is a real illness. Like, people who don't like him are crazy.
Yeah.
And crazy people who have been told that a man who forged the Abraham Accords, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, is somehow a Jew-hating Hitler, is like, it is one of the most bizarre lies they have told themselves.
Yeah.
And they believe it. And I have no idea why. It is
And
just baffling to me.
And his daughter is Jewish, and his grandchildren are Jewish.
And as G. Gordon Liddy years ago said that two people can keep a secret if one of them is dead, right?
Yeah.
So you want me to believe that Donald Trump, who lived his entire life in New York City, was in real estate and finance in New York City?
Yeah.
There's not one person who's come forward in all that time
Yeah.
to say Donald hates Jews and here's why.
Yeah.
Not one. Not one.
Yeah.
So where does this fantasy come from?
Yeah. You know, I'm going to quote another Canadian now, a gentleman named Ezra Levant, who made a video about this 8 years ago. And if you like, just look it up on YouTube, like Ezra Levant plus Trump. He's obviously, he's Jewish, for those who don't know. He said, you know, you can make this anti-Semite charge with anybody. Here's who Trump, works with. And he told all the Jews in the Trump organization. And he also is going to point out, New York City is a really bad place to hate Jews.
Yeah. Someone will notice.
Yeah. Well, that's not where you want to go.
Especially if you're a attention whore that has a camera trained on you since 1974.
Yeah. And it's funny, I grew up in the New York metro area. I grew up north of the city in Westchester County in the 80s, in the 70s and into the 90s. You saw Trump on TV or heard his ads on the radio every day. You couldn't escape the man.
He is an attention whore. He loves it.
Yeah.
Always has.
I mean, but, like as far as the election goes, I'd rather be Trump's people. But, I'll put it this way with Democratic strategy. I remember in 2012 thinking, why are they running ads with Lena Dunham? Don't they know they've got to turn out the independent voters?
Yeah.
And they were just going to maximize their turnout, and that's how they won.
Yeah. My concern, is I say this trying to be as calmly rational as possible. They want me to believe during a government manufactured Wuhan fake-demic where they've locked people in their homes that more people voted for Joe Biden than anyone in history.
Yeah.
During a period in which they mailed out random ballots. And of course, the left points to, well, Trump's crazy because all the court cases that challenged the election were overturned. So yes, well, that's true. But also remember, just because it's the law doesn't mean it's right. Apartheid was the law too, and it doesn't mean it was right. They changed all the voting laws in those states before the election. So you go to court to challenge the law. You don't go to court to challenge what should have been the rules. Yeah. So of course they lost every challenge because you're not allowed to challenge the spirit of the law. And I fully believe they just stole it. I absolutely believe it.
Oh yeah. Me too.
Which they can try to do again is my concern.
I will go to my grave convinced Trump won. I think a point I made at a now defunct publication called 1945 in the last year, it's still there, was, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, Joe Biden only got 71 million votes. That's still 71 million people who voted for a senile old sex pervert and racist from Delaware. Something's wrong. Republicans are doing something wrong. This should have. And look, the State of the Union in 2020. I remember watching, thinking, it's done. This is locked up. Trump's going to win, and he was going to win. And then, the virus, the lockdowns,
they threw the Wuhan pandemic and all this crap. Everything they tried, everything they could. And the last thing was, let's destroy a generation of children, ruin the economy, and act like fascists. And living here in Florida, I mean, thank God we left New York because in the world, except for South Dakota, Florida, and Sweden, went insane, utterly insane. I remember writing about this, why I actually began my podcast, why I began writing on brownstones, why I began writing on Substack as kind of a concerned citizen, is I'm a lot of family in Italy. I was getting the statistics directly from the Ministry of Health in Italy in January and February of 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And the statistics said everyone dying, 99.9% of people dying are over 88, men and women, and have a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
This used to be called life. We shut down the world because old people were dying of the flu.
Yeah.
It will be forever. And the fact that the Democrats to this day doubled down on this nonsense. And I got thrown off LinkedIn for quoting CDC statistics.
Yeah.
I quoted CDC statistics, which was deemed to be medical misinformation.
Yeah.
You can't wake this up.
Yeah. I mean, we've got in this area of New Jersey, we've got walking pneumonia going around right now. I
Yep.
am convinced I had it. It was a bad cough. Is really, I'm not trying to minimize COVID, but
And it was a three
you know,
standard deviation
it just,
influenza outbreak.
yeah, I mean, and then older people saying, well, we had the Hong Kong flu and and
Yeah.
I think it was
And the Hong Kong
69 or
flu
something.
came in 69.
Yeah,
And all those boomer brats did not leave Woodstock to go home
yeah,
because grandma
yeah,
might got sick. They stayed. So the most selfish generation this nation ever produced has stayed true to form all the way through. I
yeah.
got into screaming fights with people that they wanted to. Well, kids have to learn to sacrifice. No, kids don't have to learn to
No,
sacrifice.
we
That's what
sacrificed the
adults fucking
kids.
do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um.
still pisses me
You,
off
you
because
know,
they still haven't admitted they were wrong.
I'm right in there in the meaty part of Generation X, born in 1973. So I will usually gleefully join in the boomer bashing.
But it's
Uh,
subjective. I mean, that's why I wrote an entire book in the federal budget because we're $220 trillion in cumulative obligations and
yeah.
debt because of these
Again,
selfish pricks. Period.
yeah.
They took a surplus coming out of a war and turned it into saddling us and our children and our
Yeah.
grandchildren with debts
I
so
mean,
they continue to live nicely in the 55 plus communities. They're
yeah.
awful.
I mean, I remember I was talking to my kids about this because I've got 3 teenagers now and they're in government classes. And I said, I remember I came out of the 90s era GOP, Newt Gingrich
Yep.
and everything. And a couple of them were, Paul Ryan, Ted Cruz, those guys are that era. And, we were all always talking about, the deficit, entitlement reform and debt. And it seemed bad back then. And that's nothing compared to what we have now. And I've been hearing all my life, well, this is unsustainable, but we keep sustaining it.
Yeah. But
So I don't know
that's like
what's going to
a
happen.
drunk teenager who keeps getting his credit card limit extended because
Yeah,
Visa knows he's got his ass. Right?
yeah,
That's the problem. Is that most people, I've spent my career in the capital markets and I've dealt a lot in Washington for my sins. This is my world.
yeah,
And so we're only okay because on a grading on a curve relative to the rest of the profligate boomer run democracies, we're the least bad.
yeah,
But China is trying to make the renminbi a reserve currency. The Iranians have tried to create oil markets denominated in euros for years. Like, this is big picture stuff. Most Americans have no idea why
yeah,
the dollar in their wallet buys something, and now
yeah.
they're not sure why it doesn't buy as much.
Yeah, I
But
used to be a
oof,
college professor, and in history class, I would take out a 20 and say, guys, why is this valuable? And all of them say, it's backed by gold. Why do people still think that?
why do they still think that? Not only is it not backed by gold,
ridiculous.
yeah, not backed by gold, but it's part of the reason why I've got stacks of these lying around, right? Silver bars everywhere.
Yeah,
But no, actually, don't for my listeners out there. But hard assets are good. But it has been fascinating to watch that. I'm going to be hopefully it wasn't in time for the election, but I've got some big radio financial guys having me on to talk about the book soon. And I laugh because the Democrats started screaming 4 weeks ago, Project 2025, right? Project 2025 is a soft on government left wing approach in comparison to my budget, which
yeah,
takes the government from 7.7 trillion to 2.2 trillion in 6 months
yeah,
by getting rid of every department that was created after World War II.
yeah,
Gone, done, out. Unions out.
yeah.
But this is not me. This is not me talking. I want to hear about the stuff you've done because you write a lot of really
Oh,
compelling, interesting stuff.
oh, that's
You're a
nice of you to
professor.
say.
You've written some really great historical based fiction. I'm just kind of how did was you starting to write a lot of interesting fiction? Was that coincident with your professorial career or?
Um, well, it's hard if I could go back to the beginning. Uh,
Please.
I started writing my first novel in the spring of 2023. It's in print. It's called The Line Through the Desert. It's about one soldier in the first Gulf War. It seems very parochial now. One Gulf, first Gulf War and Iraq and Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the brutality of book sales through that, because it didn't matter how much I advertised, it
Yep.
didn't move. Ooh, thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Forget it. But I was a writer, and I was writing magazine articles for like military history magazines that you see at Barnes and Noble. And I just kept writing, and I did my second novel, really original stuff, called To Defend the Earth, about an alien invasion. No one's ever done that before, and it actually did okay.
So,
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I remember I checked, I was like, I sold like 7, 9, 11, 14, 19 on successive days. That's cumulative, by the way.
yeah.
That's not, I'm like, oh my God, it's moving. And I just kept going, and I just kept having ideas. And my third was called Israel Strikes, now completely overtaken by events about
Yeah.
Israel attacking Iran and then a war in Lebanon. And that came out in 2013, and that really sold. I've never matched how good that sold. I
That's
did the
great.
sequel, and then I started getting into alternate history because I don't remember the exact spark anymore. But I grew up in the 80s reading Tom Clancy and playing tabletop war games,
Right.
simulating the Third World War. And you're not, yeah, sure, NATO, the next war in Europe, game design workshop, World War III. And I'm going to do an alternate history, imagining this happened, but knowing everything we know today. And it was called World War 1990. And it was just in 1990 because I think vaguely in the back of my head I had it that the Gulf War was going to spark it. And I put it there also because I didn't want to be 85, because I didn't want to write about Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And I knew Bush and Cheney and Scowcroft and Powell from watching them on TV in 1990 and 1991. I understood just how they presented, and it was supposed to be one novel, mostly about NATO leaders sitting around the table going, okay, we're going to attack Eastern Europe now. And I just kept getting ideas and ideas and more, and it's like 10 now. I'm working on the 11th, and I just decided. There's tons of alternate history World War III novels out there now. But for those who don't know, this started in the 80s with Tom Clancy. He was the first to write What If We Go to War with the Soviet Union? Well, he's the second. General Sir John Hackett was the first, a British guy who wrote a book in '78 about that, if it was a history book. And Clancy did it, and this started. There was a half dozen techno thriller authors, and no one talked about some of the side stuff. Like Tom Clancy never deals with the Pacific in Red Storm Rising, and that's a really interesting aspect, I thought. And just in one novel I have the Italians and the French attacking Crimea, and we have to invade Cuba at one point, and it's basically the National Guard and things
We
like
do it right because we don't hire a bunch of Cubans who are really not fit for
yeah,
that.
yeah. And I was just kind of interested in side things like that. I had the memoir of General Fred Franks, who commanded Schwarzkopf's left hook in Desert Storm. So I had a novel where he and Schwarzkopf are invading Poland, and there's a huge battle. And since I had his whole novel, I knew exactly how his headquarters was laid out, who manned the radio. I knew all of the division commanders. And I even have a couple of friends who were in tanks in Desert Storm who knew all these guys,
Yeah.
or knew of and they said, one of them said, make Butch Funk the head of the National Guard Armor Corps. Because another thing, I want to have all these National Guard units coming over, and I wanted to break some new ground in this genre, at least for me. And I did steal one idea, and anyone who likes it, who likes this genre knows there's an author from the early 90s named Ian Slater, and he had the SAS drop on Red Square.
That's fun.
I did the same thing,
but
I had them bring flamethrowers.
That's even better. I love What If with history is always fun. I was in Germany a couple of years ago in business in Munich, and thinking, right, like all that had to happen was that first gallery owner who told Hitler to fuck off, that his watercolors sucked. If he had happened to like his art, he could have gone on to become a semi-successful artist.
Yeah,
and that would have been it.
It's funny you should mention that, because I did a novel called The Austrian Painter.
Mm-hmm.
What if Germany won the Great War? And it's the idea that Germany wins, in 1914,
And
1915.
then,
And
yeah, they're not disgraced. They're not
yeah,
punitive
yeah.
reparations.
And I did a lot of research. I read what I think is still the most recent important biography. Oh, Volker Ehrlich, I think. And Hitler was actually supporting himself by the time the Great War broke out. But the novel actually starts in 1964. And you alternate history fans will know why a novel about Germany, an alternate Germany 1964, should ring a bell, because there's a very famous one called Fatherland, which is where America is in a Cold War with Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Instead, it's 1964. Germany is a big empire. It's not evil. It's just sort of a big Germanic empire building big monuments to itself, and it's got
Beer, clean streets.
Congo's a colony, and they're
Right.
fighting an insurgency in Congo, and you're just following basically Adolf Hitler through his life. Except he's just a painter. He's just an old man who lives in Berlin, and he likes the bohemian scene,
Of
which he
course.
probably would have actually.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
Yeah,
You know,
1964.
before my hippie girls who give it up with resistance. Yeah, great times. You're a famous artist. Perfect.
Yeah, and I just keep getting ideas. It's really about the 20th century and how rotten the 20th century was and how different it would have been if World War I turned out differently.
Yeah. It's one of the things we do to keep myself sane, because I kick around. I do a lot of work with kind of military public-private partnerships, a lot of stuff in security. It's a lot of it's wargaming ideas, that kind of stuff, right? A lot of that. It's never ending. And whenever everyone gets too gloomy, I say, let's think about all of the potential Stalins, Lenins, Pol Pots, Mao's, and Hitler that didn't make it to the top.
Yeah.
There were lots. Like in an alternate universe, Cambodia took over Asia, right? By sheer dint of will.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I read all the Dune novels voraciously. Of course, he based the Fremen on the Saudis. He based the Fremen on the jihadists, right? And I don't know if you see the two recent film adaptations. I think were pretty well done.
Yeah.
Very hard to convey such a wild sweep and scope into film form, but they do a good job. And at the end, I always wonder, like today, what kids read and what they know of history, and what they know about, just what they know about history, what they know about what happened with Lawrence of Arabia, who he was, why it mattered, why the Wahhabists were who Ibn Saud leaned on. And the very end of that film, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the second Dune film, there's a choice. The Emperor can abdicate and let this young man take over the throne, or he can say no. And when he says no, he tells them to go forth, basically go forth with God. And you see the ships loading up to go bring jihadism to the universe.
Yeah.
A powerful scene, and I kind of wonder if any of the kids even know what that refers to now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I saw them both. I liked them both. I've only ever read the first Dune novel. And I actually watched the Sci-Fi Channel's version of Children of Dune. I remember you can't get it anymore, but I liked that.
Yeah. You should go read all of them, because God Emperor of Dune was arguably, I think, Herbert's greatest book. Before he died. It's phenomenally well done. But anyway. So what's the biggest thing you're looking at the things currently? I mean, obviously October 7th of last year has touched off a lot of strange things here in the West. In a way that I kind of feel sorry for a lot of my fellow Jews who are liberal, because they not only was it horrifying, but they faced kind of the double shock of being surprised that a lot of the people they thought were allies in some way hate their fucking guts to the core. And I think they're blindsided. And I think they're still reeling from it.
Yeah. It sort of gets into politics and religion now, and in America, you've got secular Reform Jews, and I come from Reform Judaism. I'm not Reformed now. they're Democrats, and that's
Yep.
fine.
I think it was fine until this election.
Yeah,
But
do I do look at a lot of these liberal Jewish voters, and I'm just thinking, you've got this image of Trump in your head that makes no sense. It's a lie. If you thought about it for 2 seconds, oh, that's not right. And you've got a Republican Party with a few weirdos in it, and you know that you run into people all the time. And I live in a neighborhood that's nicknamed Chindia. You can look it up, or in the Urban Dictionary. Most of my neighbors are Indian or Chinese. And every once in a while you run into someone who will say, I love how you Jews are great with money, because they don't have that filter. And so
exactly.
you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially love Asians who, and I work in Sri Lanka and other places. It's that they categorize people naturally in their own cultures, right? There are caste
yeah,
systems in India,
yeah,
there are linguistic groups in China, and so to the Western ear, that comment like "you Jews are good with money"
yeah.
is offensive from our context. There, it's a
From there,
compliment.
it's
What
a
do we
great
know about
compliment.
Jews? They're very capable business people.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, and and it's as far as the religious politics go, we're beyond now. I think taxes should be low and you think they should be high. And
Yep.
I'm not comfortable around those Southern Baptist types, which makes no sense because they all love Jews. They all see it as a religious duty to support Israel.
Exactly.
And it's way beyond this, Obamacare or anything. You are really going to support a party that can't tell Ilhan Omar and
Just
Rashida
shut
Tlaib
up.
no. So you know what? We're gonna make sure you have primary opposition because this is just not acceptable. At
Yep.
least the Republicans will there'll be someone that will be hanging around with the wrong group. Yeah, you're getting a primary. We're gonna make
Yeah.
sure you lose. And whether you think that guy should have been or not is not the point.
That's the point. They take
Um,
action. Rashida Tlaib has
yeah,
a terrorist flag
yeah,
hanging outside of her office on U.S. taxpayer property. Can you imagine if a son of German immigrants in 1943 had a fucking
yeah,
Nazi flag outside of his office in the Rayburn building?
yeah,
That's treason.
yeah. And when they are confronted with, I hate the term anti-Semitism. I always have. It's so clinical. I just call it, Judenhass, Jew hatred, because that's what
Jew
we're talking
hatred.
about.
And it's not anti-Semitism
Yeah.
because Arabs are also Semites.
Are Semites. You could drop my dad in
Exactly.
Beirut; he'd fit right in. I don't look all that Jewish, but my father, trust me, yeah, he could definitely be walking the streets of Cairo or Beirut, and he fits in.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're confronting now, and they can't just say no, this is wrong. We're not going to have any of it. It's not even about Israel anymore.
Because they know nothing about Israel. This
Yeah,
is an excuse to yell about Jews.
yeah, and liberal leaning American Jews have been embarrassed by Israel for a long time, because really for the last 20, 25 years or so, they, starting with Ariel Sharon, they fight back, they punch you back,
Hard, which is all you can do to
and they
bullies.
just say, no, we're going to live there. That's our land. And it's uncomfortable for, liberal American Jews who want to still think, Israel is this, the kibbutzim,
Yep.
this socialist country that's surrounded by enemies. And they really hate Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't love the man personally. I don't like a couple of the political parties that are in his government. It's okay. I don't have to like him.
Not your country. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I
we're
don't
debating Aaliyah, honestly. And my biggest concern is this madness that the Haredim don't have to go into the military because they're too busy fucking studying.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone about that the other day who works in Netanyahu's government, works for him. And most Americans certainly don't understand it, but I mean, the reason was solid in the early 40s, and that they said, like, we're fighting all these Arabs who are we're starting a new state. The British mandate is ending. We're going to be a country. At that time, Hitler had decimated the rabbinical ranks in Europe. So all the learned Jews were dead.
We need more
And
rabbis.
we need more rabbis. And there
Yeah.
were like 3 studying in Israel at that time. Like, well,
Yeah.
we're not fucking sending these 3 to the front. Really, I mean, they're not going to make a difference. And they are the most learned scholars we
Yeah.
got out of Europe. They're not going to fight. From that, it metastasized into every mediocre intellect with payas is like, well, I'm going to stay here. No. No. And you can't get to stay here. What was that? It was a great Israeli TV show that was on Netflix for a while.
Fauda?
Schniesel. Did you see that, Schniesel?
No.
Schniesel was great because it focused on the Haredi community, and you heard them, how they talk. When National Day, when Independence Day came, they made the kids sit inside because we're not going to join the Zionists in the celebration, right? So you got this bizarreness of, I'm staying here, I'm protected by you, but I don't think Israel should exist because Moshiach hasn't arrived. But it pisses me off. You can't have it both fucking ways. Either you're here because the Israelis will protect you, and therefore you owe a duty to the state, or stay somewhere else and wait for Moshiach. You don't get to have it both ways in my mind. They really piss me off.
Yeah, that's when this war is over. I ideally, I think Netanyahu would say, I am the Lion of Judah who slayed our enemies. I'm retiring. I'm going to write a memoir and go tour the United States. And a government led by the centrist, slightly right, I would say, Naftali Bennett.
Yeah.
And, you know, the blue and whites, but Benny Gantz has no political instincts whatsoever. He made a deal with Netanyahu. Never make a deal with Netanyahu. And Lapid, who I really don't have a problem with. The job of the opposition, as Disraeli said, is to oppose. Lapid is just doing his job, hammering Netanyahu like that, and maybe a rump Likud party that doesn't have Bibi, and do something about the Haredi situation and serving, and some of the religious laws, and something about the Arab community.
Yeah,
there's
you're the perfect audience. This I've written about it. That when October 3rd of last year, 2023, I was in New York, happened to be in the office of a chairman of a massive global Jewish organization, very prominent, and some of Netanyahu's staff were with us, and we were celebrating because the Saudis and Israelis at the UN had been making a lot of progress, right? So it was a fascinating moment to kind of be a fly in the wall for, right? I had no particular reason to be there. I was there for a meeting. And that was very interesting and very positive, right? So came back to Florida for the high holidays, and then of course October 7th happened. And my immediate read was Iran saw Israel and Saudi finally kind of making peace and joining the Abraham Accords. This is existential for them. They can't have this.
Yeah.
They cannot have this. Their entire existence depends upon this artificial rift between the Jewish world and the Islamic world. And so they caused October 7th. And my read is, hadn't it been another, they killed 5 people, they took a soldier hostage, they threw some missiles, everyone in the UN would have pushed down, we would have ceasefire. To me, this is World War III. And when it ends, a Orthodox Jewish couple sitting in Casablanca having tea will stand up and be able to take a walking holiday along the rim of the Mediterranean all the way to Istanbul, and no one will do anything but offer them tea.
Yeah.
Now, whether that takes a year, 5 years, I don't know. But to me, this is it. We clean house. The Islamist nightmare who has terrorized everyone in the world, Hindus, Jews, Christians, atheists, Buddhists. Enough of these fucking animals. Enough. The world is going to say enough. That is my belief, that as World War II tumbled into greater and greater size, I believe that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, as P.J. O'Rourke said, the Middle East is a problem that not even God has solved.
Yep.
I don't even know what to think anymore about what they're going to do about Gaza.
It's going to be part of Israel. Gaza, if these evil assholes weren't a poisonous society, it should be Singapore or Dubai.
Yeah.
It should be paradise. Enough. The UN has got to be dismantled. UNRWA has to go fucking immediately. But
Yeah.
the UN we could deal with later. But Gaza and Judea and Samaria are going to be part of Israel. And you
Yeah.
can live there peacefully. And if you pick up a rock, you're going to get shot. Enough of this. 78 years of this shit. Enough.
Yeah. And
Enough.
well, I excoriated someone a couple weeks ago for saying, we need a peace process, a two-state solution. I said, you sound like Shimon Peres.
Yep.
and that's not good.
Indeed, yeah.
I would just personally, that's
What I
I don't
find
even
fascinating about
describe Shimon
the
Peres.
Western left, they don't listen to what people say.
Yeah.
Hamas, no Arab has ever said two-state solution except as a way to get the idiots to give them more. They don't want it. They haven't wanted it. They've never wanted it. So listen to what people tell you. When Hamas says we want a ceasefire to build up again to then kill the Zionist entity, believe them when they say that.
Yeah. That's something, and I'll be a broken record. That's something that Mark Stein says a lot. They keep telling us we want to kill you, and we can, we don't really believe you. And well, no, they do.
Yeah, they do.
And so the problem of Gaza, who wants that place? The Egyptians don't want it back.
No. We should have kept the entire Sinai. Should have never given it back.
David Petraeus was saying, you got to build it up. I'm like, this is not a counterinsurgency. This isn't Baghdad. You don't get what's happening. It's sort of like the Pacific War. It's like after Pearl Harbor. It's like, no, we are going to beat you down until you can't take it anymore. And then just to make our point, we're going to drop the atom bomb on you.
Yep.
And I thought, not that I'm saying we should drop the atom bomb on Gaza. Or the Israelis.
Until the 101 hostages are released. Yeah. Fucking smoke it in a heartbeat.
And, maybe they're tired of it. I have no idea what your average Gazan thinks. I think there's a great Twitter account called Israel Radar. He's an Israeli guy. He's got a website too. He does reports. He just did one report basically saying the Israelis completely outsmarted Hezbollah. Because everyone was anticipating this big, massive invasion, and the Israelis didn't do that. It was more of a boiling water strategy, and now here we are. So I think Netanyahu has done incredibly well. I do not. In my time following Israeli politics, I have liked the man. I have loathed the man in the early 2000s. I have liked and loved him again. I don't really care for him now, but I can't think of anyone else I would want being prime minister.
Exactly. Right now. I've never had a problem with him. I like it as being consistent because I think he's been consistent.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare. The people on the left that say I love how these idiots blame him for the actions of others.
Yeah.
Hamas took hostages. Bibi didn't take hostages. And he's told them, you give up the hostages and lay down your arms, there will be peace. That moment, the moment those hostages cross the border, we're done. You keep going. You want this to happen. Yahya Sinwar explicitly said he wants more Palestinian kids to be shot and wounded on television because that's going to make the world pressure Israel. And he missed the fact that you don't get to rape and kill 1,200 fucking people dancing at a music festival and go back to the status quo. You don't get to do that. They really, that's been their bizarre miscalculation. That you didn't think the world's eventually going to figure out the leaders of Hamas live lives as billionaires in Istanbul and Doha. You think that's not going to come out? And that the rest of the world is going to start to be like, I pause. The only thing that has made me very happy in a horrible world is that consistently 80% of random Americans polled say, of course, Israel was invaded by a bunch of psychotic terrorist assholes, right? That's true, period. 80% of Americans. And so the radical left wing of the Democrat Party, is choosing a bizarre position to take. Yeah. Bernie Sanders coming on TV and saying, Kamala is, I don't like the fact she supports Israel, but she's better than Donald. By all logic, they should lose Reagan Mondale style.
Bernie Sanders, he's a socialist. He's not a Jew. I don't. Now, I have never heard anything. I really don't like to criticize someone's Judaism because, believe me, I'm not perfect. I like bacon. Um, so, but he
Seems a
seems to.
lot. I stick to about 550.
Yeah.
A key one is I'm raising a red heifer, but anyway.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
The
And so
good
you've
side
got.
to Bernie is because he went to the college at the University of Chicago, where I did years before. There was an article, I'll find it, an interview done with him in Chicago Magazine, which is the university alumni magazine, in 2016 when he was running against Hillary and Biden in the primary. He literally never grew up. He wrote about getting to University of Chicago and being envious of and angry at all the rich kids. He came from Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Well, with hindsight, he would have realized maybe 5% of them were rich kids. The demographics have stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
The University of Chicago for the last 50 years, right? So he gets there with a chip on his shoulder. He looks at all the waspy kids who are joining the fraternities, and he gets envious and angry. And hearing him speak about it in 2016, it's like he never grew up. He's trapped in his 18-year-old head,
Well, he
jealous
didn't
of
have
the
a
rich kids.
job until his 40s, right?
Yeah.
When he was mayor of Burlington or something. Yeah, he's not cute anymore. I think that's sort of where this isn't like 20. I lived and worked in Washington for a while, and he was sort of the wacky socialist congressman, and then he's a senator. Who cares? It's not funny anymore. It's not.
It's not funny because he has pulled the party in his direction. To give him credit where credit is due, that true believer, fellow traveler, has pulled the party toward him, idiot by idiot, over all that time, and they are so insane. JFK would not recognize this party as the Democrat Party.
Yeah,
but
the whole thing's a mess.
It's awful.
The whole, at one end, I sit here and I look at political polls, and to be honest, it just comes down to who you want to believe at this point. And then I think, is this really going to matter? Because what's going to happen day after the election, just like in 2020. And now I thought naively in retrospect that, Trump being so litigious anyway was going to be ready.
Yeah.
And he clearly wasn't.
He wasn't ready.
And
I think the difference is this time he's ready.
It seems like it because I know they were throwing lawsuits around Pennsylvania this morning.
Yeah.
And there are some fanciful Republican theories that the Democratic apparatus isn't going to try to do the shenanigans for Kamala Harris. I've heard arguments about that, arguments for that, and okay, the math checks out, but do the Democrats really like to lose?
They don't.
And after 96, and I was rolling Bob, those wrong candidate, wrong time. Bill Clinton was going to win no matter what anyway.
Yeah.
2008 was like McCain was never going to win, and in retrospect, thank God.
Terrible choice.
Romney hurt, but that was still one where if you're a GOP, you're thinking, okay, we know what we did wrong.
And Romney, frankly, another effete East Coaster who had no fight in him.
In the long run,
he took Obama to task in that debate. He spanked him.
Yep.
And I remember 2 weeks after that debate, I was invited into the belly of the beast backstage in New York with a friend whose father was a very prominent former Democrat governor. And he said, oh, you should come along to this thing. I think had they known I wasn't a Democrat, maybe they would have tossed me out. Yeah. But it was a hardcore Democrat aligned group meeting for a big prominent thing. And Ed Koch spoke. I remember this vividly because it was the only time I ever met Ed. And he died about 2 months afterwards.
Yeah.
I'd never met him before. And I only shook his hand briefly there. I didn't get to talk to him. An imposing presence, I got to say. He was an imposing man.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Really, in person, old, 2 months before dying, he was a powerful man. It was fascinating to meet him. But he got up there and spoke. He said, I'm a Democrat. I want Democrats to win. Right now, if the election were held, Mitt Romney would win by a landslide. It was 2 weeks after the disastrous debate. And Romney just Romney was an old school WASP gentleman. He lacked the killer instinct. He wasn't a street fighter. He didn't hire street fighters.
Yeah.
And he lost. Trump coming into his first term, I was actually asked to be Undersecretary of Treasury, so I started that process.
Oh wow.
Is Yeah, so a lot of the guys who were running headhunting for Treasury under Steve were old friends of mine in New York, so they were like, "Would you
On
be
your chin.
interested?" Yeah. Um, so I started that process. I eventually, for my own reasons, decided this was not a good idea at the time. My wife said, "We're going to lose half our friends." I said, "I don't like half our friends," but I just didn't go through with it. But Trump, A, I think he was surprised he won. B, he should have known better, but he didn't. He really thought that no matter what political divisions there are, when you become CEO, you're in charge, right? Which is what happens in
Yeah.
the business world. People get in fucking line and they quit or you fire them, right? And I don't think he understood the depth of the deep state, unaccountable, unionized, permanent bureaucracy. I don't think he understood what you had to do to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And so he spent 4 years fighting them. This time coming in, they've already got a transition team that is fully privately funded, not depending upon anyone. Like they've got a plan. And in terms of why I'm positive, when DeSantis was still the leader in the primary about 9-10 months ago,
Yeah.
good friend of mine in Washington who has been in Republican administrations before, and I've known him for a long time for the capital markets. He called me quietly and said, "I'm basically I'll be DeSantis' chief of staff, right? I know how you think. I read the draft of your book. I know how you think about the federal government. I know what you'd want to do. If you could take a cabinet post, what would you do? And like pick one." I said HUD. I said, "What would you do with HUD?" So it'd be easy. I'd call an all hands meeting on the first day. I'd say, "You're fired. Get the fuck out."
Yeah.
And
Like
here,
Elon Musk.
yeah, Elon should give me some credit. Thank you. But that's exactly it. And he said, "Well, they're gonna complain." I said, "Great." And I said, "Great. And the American people are not going to continue to pay you to sue them. So if you want to pool your money and find lawyers to defend the unconstitutionality of a public sector union, you go right ahead.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is my personal security comes from the veteran community because I don't trust any of you assholes. Please surrender your firearms and get out. And we're going to sell the building. So the time you complain, the building will have already been sold."
Yeah.
He said, "I love that." I said, "Good." So I think there's a real intention in this election that this is the time, scorched earth, chop Leviathan back down. I'm glad Vivek and Elon have been saying it. I wish they gave me credit, but I'd rather have them say it and not give me credit.
You
It
know,
has to be. We have to.
well, you got to win it first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, to win.
I've and maybe you've seen me say it on Substack, and I think you look. I knew the polls were wrong in 2020. They vastly underestimated Trump's support. They did that also in 2016. Are they doing that again now? If they are, then it's going to be an easy night. It'll be beyond the margin of fraud.
Yep.
If they're accurate, and my hunch is they are. That's just, I was saying today, the state polls show it's close, the national polls show it close. So it probably is close. If they are, then it's going to take a lot of lawyering. And by the way, and we all know this, they're gonna try all kinds of shenanigans with the Electoral College, with Congress. Kamala might even say, "I'm not going to certify this." It's sort of like getting back to what I said before. What are they planning? What about their election strategy are we not getting? Because I used to think Obama's election strategy was stupid in 2020, and I thought with Biden's strategy in 2020, I thought that was stupid too, and they're dumb. They don't know what they're doing. Well, they did know what they were doing.
Yeah.
So
they combined a radically crucial ground game in the States while Biden hid in his basement. It was actually genius.
Yeah. And look, there you now in the defense of the people who think the Democrats are doomed, there's a lot of you're getting the news reports about the infighting and stuff like that.
Basics. The economy sucks. Inflation has killed the middle class.
Yeah.
Like on that alone, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way a popular Democrat should win.
I thought that in 2012. Well, the economy's not great, and we've got some foreign policy disasters, and Romney cleaned Obama's clock, but not enough people thought that.
Yep. But this is more kind of, I think, as I said, when I moved from New York to America, I began to listen to people.
Yeah.
And I knew, so I cleaned up on the 2020 election because in early 2020, I used to trade at the NYMEX. So I had a video conference with a bunch of New York Mercantile Exchange traders. And of course, they're in New York, so they're hearing that Hillary's a shoo-in, right? And I said, look, I think Trump's going to win. I'm here in America. People fucking hate Hillary. Or they hate Hillary. Kind of like they hate Trump now, which is the problem, right? But I said, no, Trump's going to win. And this was before he actually got the full nomination.
Yeah.
And I said, look, we're traders, right? Put your money where your mouth is. What's the Vegas line? I'll take that. It was 20-1 in favor of Hillary. I was like, I'll take it. I'll take all the action you got. So I built up a huge book.
Saw it. I saw it too. I saw working class guys that I knew who didn't care about politics. They put the MAGA hat on. I'm like, oh man, this is
instantly.
Yeah.
I knew I had won. I don't know if there were a lot of these where you were, but I began to see in Florida, and then I was in Georgia a lot, and then out west a bit. I began to see mid-market sedans, and the bumper was Bernie supporter for Trump.
Oh yeah,
because they felt justifiably the Democrat Party with their super delegates bullshit had Queen made her. They didn't listen to the people. Yeah. I actually think Bernie could have beat Trump. That's the great irony of history.
Because he could have, and really more ironically, Biden would have beaten Trump.
Biden would have beaten him in a heartbeat.
Absolutely, that nice old man. Heartbeat. Like if you ever look up in 2016 when they're certifying the vote and some congressmen get up and try to contest it and Biden's chairing, it's hilarious because he's like, I just want to go to the Rehoboth, man. It's like I remember he said, it is over. Like that Biden I liked. You know, my wife's actually from Delaware. And it's actually smaller than the maps, or at least it was in the 90s. And, everyone, was like, all right, Biden's okay.
All right, he's okay, middle of the road guy, right?
But he would have won in 2016 easily.
Did it to themselves. They took the choice away from their own people. Why you would think choosing a less popular candidate in your own party would automatically mean you win in the election. I mean, I don't even understand the logic. If you can't get your own base excited about a candidate, why do you think that candidate's going to be exciting to the rest of the world?
Well, she certainly, I've been saying, and this is, I think the basis genesis for this goes back to Rush Limbaugh saying, elections come down to circumstances, candidates, and ideas. Rush used to talk about ideas all the time. Ideas matter. Yeah. And in 2016, Hillary didn't have any of those. I mean, it's like you get to the Russia stuff. I've been screaming this. Why do you think the 2016 election should have been easy for Hillary? I'm not saying it wasn't winnable. Yeah. It's tough to win 3 in a row.
Yeah.
For a party, it's hard to do. You better you better bring your A game, and they didn't have one. They really did.
And her entire campaign was based on ego. I'm with her.
Yep. A lot of people have made that. Notice that, yeah.
For me.
Yep.
Like, what brain dead asshole thought?
Yeah.
Stoking her ego. I'm with her like she's a queen, and Trump's like, I'm going to make America great again. On the basis of slogan alone, who wins? Who's more inspiring?
Well, you get back to that. And I think a lot of the thing that I think part of what I got wrong about 2020 is you look at 2016, Trump's election was surprising, wasn't all that impressive.
No.
And he won, and in 2020, you needed to up the game, and they did. They just couldn't do it beyond the margin of whatever you want to call what the Democrats did. Yeah. And the question now,
dead voting.
Yeah, in 2020, it's just funny. 1992 was the first election I could vote in, and I was a Democrat, and I voted for Clinton. I don't regret that at all. It was just time. I was 19 years old. George Bush had to go, and Democrats.
That's a topic for another day because I was 21 and I worked in the Bush campaign.
But it was just Democrats were so jaded, and I think this time really maybe I don't, but I don't know, and I think that's sort of where I am. 2020 to 2024, because you are right. The fundamentals all support Trump.
Oh God, mine. And what doesn't support him is people hate Trump because of Trump derangement syndrome. The way people hated Hillary, Like that's the big
Yeah.
factor in the room. People are just not rational when they talk about Trump, and those who hate him, like they are blinded
Yeah.
with completely irrational rage. And I know for Hillary, my wife, my mother, educated women, right? They will never forgive her. This dingbat who failed the bar 4 times until her husband became governor, when magically she passed the bar,
Yeah.
saying dismissively, "Well, what was I supposed to do? Sit home and bake cookies?"
Yeah.
Thereby invalidating every woman who values raising her own fucking children instead of having a nanny do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she said that she pissed off 45% of American women irretrievably.
Yeah.
Done. Done.
Well, yeah. Well, what in 20? It's so incredible. It's 2024, and we still have to rehash 2016.
Yes, because the boomers won't go away. I don't want
They,
Trump running either. I wish
I
it were
want
Vance.
I wanted DeSantis.
Yeah, I definitely wanted
Uh,
DeSantis because I'd be busy. I'd be looking forward to dismantling HUD in 6 weeks.
yeah. Oh yeah. You still, and it's like they still haven't gotten over it. I got over 2012, which
Yeah, took some doing.
it wasn't. It was all right. We lost. It's fine. 2020. That was a rough autumn. uh,
It was showed to me. It showed the depth.
yeah.
Because I've been writing about the creeping Marxism and Jew hatred on American campuses for 30 years.
Yeah.
I was that guy you'd edge away from at the party because I got a little strident.
Right.
And sadly, I was right. October 7th showed it, right? That close. And George Gilder, have you read his book, The Israel Test?
No.
It's a really good book, and part of why he hones in on why those things are connected, aside from Marx being another self-hating Jew. That, of course, the left, who are by definition godless, right?
Yeah.
The materialism from Hegel and Marx, they hate God, and they believe fully that the family is a danger to the state as they conceive it.
Yeah.
So if your entire life is about group guilt or group innocence or group rights, you hate Judaism, which is the origin of the idea of individual responsibility.
Yeah.
And you can't blame, right? You have to hate that. So they can't address Israel as an insanely prosperous country that was devoid of natural resources on the same patch of desert that the Ottoman Empire had done nothing with, and now is a prosperous, booming country that is democratic to the core, surrounded by despots. And they just can't look at that empirically and say, maybe what they're doing is right. Like they tell these kids in colleges, the Jews stole it. Stole what? It was a patch of fucking desert. They didn't steal anything.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they showed up and found Manhattan developed as it is and took it. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
So that emphasis on growing the pie for everyone, which is what Judaism is about, and looking forward and valuing life, not death, is combined with people with a fixed mindset who believe the pie exists and we have to fight over how we cut it up.
Yeah.
And by the way, we worship death and our mothers sing our praises when we become shaheeds, right? That is the problem. And how they've managed to make these kids march on Harvard Yard is astonishing to me. It is just unendingly astonishing to me that they have succeeded as well as they started out to succeed in the 60s.
Yeah, we're 20 minutes from Rutgers, and they have an Islamist Gazan problem there, and every college around here seems to.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm sort of at a loss for words. When the attack happened, I knew what was going to happen next. It was going to be like George Floyd again, and the SJP protesters were going to show up, and try to tear the country apart. So I don't.
But beyond that, it's the coordination, right? So, and this is not new. I'm not the one to write about it. Roy Singham, this asshole Marxist who managed to make a pile of money in Silicon Valley, and he is funding all this, right? Very few people were asking. I was asking on day fucking one, pardon my English, Why are there big printed banners on the morning of October 8th in Times Square? Really?
Yeah.
Really? That got done overnight. No preparation.
Yeah.
No one knew, right? This guy knew this was going to happen. So the number of people that have to be flushed out of the woodwork who knew this was going to happen, they have to be found. Like Joe McCarthy had a good idea, but he was weak on the implementation. Like we really need to find these people. And Roy Singham, of course, before October 7th, flew to mainland China, and he hasn't left since.
Really?
Because he is fucking wanted #1. And it's his bitch wife who created Code Pink, like all of them. Oh, now you know. Yeah, that crew.
Yes, of course.
So he funds this, and they all have these great names. Remember? So whether undergraduate students for Democratic Society, leftist terrorists always name their organizations something that's exactly the opposite of what it is.
Yeah, I was just explaining that to. The Democratic People's Republic of China. If Democratic People's Republic is in front of the name, it's not.
So, I'm blanking on the name, but they've got offices on 6th Avenue in the 30s, right? It sounds great. It's like, great people for peace. They got 4 floors of a building. Yeah. He's funded the whole thing. That was the group that had all these beautiful printed banners at 7 a.m. on October 8th in Times Square. He knew it was going to happen, probably from his buddies at the UN who helped plan it, right? And the degree of the rot within the country is terrifying. And when Trump said something about we're going to, find out domestic enemies, of course, the left screamed at him that that's Hitler. No. Every person who's acculturated to this country becomes a citizen. You swear a loyalty oath in which you promise to defend the country against enemies, foreign and domestic. Suddenly, they've turned a loyalty oath into something scary and totalitarian when it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. I don't know. So what do you think?
I really think all logic points, given just the normal swings of a shitty economy, people like change. Cackles has enjoyed 0.1% approval rating since her first time out of the gate. Like, it's a joke. She's not a talented politician. She's a demonstrable moron. And so there's no way on the basis of it. Crappy economy, people are stressed, gas is really expensive. She's an idiot. She didn't win it. She didn't have to campaign to win anything. She's afraid of a softball interview with Communist News Network, which even then they have to edit. Whereas Trump will sit with Joe Rogan for 3.5 hours and just go at it. Like, there's no way he shouldn't win by a landslide. Yeah. No way.
I mean, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I said I thought the race was probably close given the polls. But if you look at all these internals, Kamala is going to have 62% of the Jewish vote, which is way down. It should be up in the 80s. And like Trump's basically tied with Arab American voters. And Kamala's down with black voters, and she's down with Hispanic voters. Yep. If that's the case,
the black community in Georgia near the Fulton County Courthouse lined the streets for him after he walked out of that stupid. She gave him a mugshot. She was the only one dumb enough to make him take a mugshot.
Yeah, then unless there's some demographic that I don't see, and there's only so many college-educated, upper-class white people. You can have the greatest turnout machine ever. Doesn't matter if there aren't enough voters.
Yeah.
Now maybe they're probably firing up the ballot machine now. We actually know they are. If you follow any,
The Democratic interns have carpal tunnel for filling in absentee ballots. Absolutely. Yeah. On the jovial side, my daughter voted for the first time this year.
Congratulations.
We went together, and she said, "Do you want to do the TikTok?" I said, "I'm sorry." Apparently, there's a whole TikTok trend of dads and their daughters going to vote together, basically hashtag canceling our votes. Very funny.
Okay.
But she, there's a great example, right? Very intelligent, college student studying, criminal justice reform, and she fucking loathes Kamala because she locked up black men for no reason in Oakland, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a traditional, what you call as kind of a liberal leaning, which is, what was that? Who was that great line? If you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart. If you're not a
Yeah.
conservative when you're 40, you have no brain.
Yeah.
So, but like they're true to form. She's like, Donald's awful, but Kamala's a horror show. I'm not voting for her. So like there was a potential Kamala vote that might go to Jill Stein, may not go to Trump, but it's not going to Kamala.
Yeah.
So think about the ones that are not going to Kamala. Again, if there were just benchmark levels of Democrat shenanigans, right? I think
Yeah.
Trump takes it by a mile. Like
I
they
think
have to
so.
pull out the stops to stuff ballots this time.
It's like let's say the Trump voters or the people make up their mind the last minute to vote for Trump. It doesn't mean the polls were wrong. It's just that last minute bump that happens sometimes where you see, well, these races look really close, and then it turns out they're not because people at the last minute make up their mind. The other argument against them, the pollsters figuring out against the polls being right is how have you figured out how to measure Trump voters? Because you and I both know a lot of Trump voters won't talk to the pollsters or
but also,
will give them bad info.
The polling,
I used to do that.
Oh yeah, I did that all the time. The last election. Oh yeah. But the polling laws changed. Yeah. They're not allowed to call cell phones. You're only allowed to call landlines.
Oh
so,
my God.
Who under 40 has a landline?
Yeah.
So
I
that
don't have a landline.
Use the people have call blockers on. Like I think polling has gotten really hard because people are now smart about polling and they will give wrong answers. Like maybe if I tell this guy that I'm voting for Kamala and I'm really excited about it and people hear that, then more lefties will stay home on election day because they think they got it. Right. So it's that whole Keynesian, kind of game theory thing. It doesn't matter what I believe. Do I know what other people believe? So I just on the basis of it, he should win. He would win Reagan Mondale type if he were J.D. Vance. The fact remains is, I think Trump is, as my wife says, please don't make me defend Donald Trump. Right? He is an asshole. He is crass. He is all of those things. And that's always been true. I mean, I watched, because we grew up in the same area, right? In New York, I loved foreigners and other Americans be astonished by Donald Trump. We were like, that's Donald. What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, it's like when my wife and I, my wife's from Delaware, as I said, which is more or less sort of culturally Midwestern, really. It's not, it's not, even though it's sort of the suburbs of Philly, it's really rural once you get once you get down south. And when we moved to New Jersey and we were looking for a house, I mean, our real estate agent was very Jersey and smarmy, and she hated his guts. And I was just like, what's wrong? What's wrong with Pete here? Because I'm going to get you a good deal on something. Come on. And like, okay, I know what this is. Exactly. I'll tell you another thing Trump might have going for him was, in 2020, how much of the GOP wanted Trump to lose?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, McConnell,
now they don't.
Why do you think Ryan left the House in 2018? If he had stayed, they probably could have held on to the House. I think. I mean, they held the Senate.
Yeah.
But McConnell, and I don't even remember who the leader was in the House, and who cares? They wanted Trump to lose.
It's a tragedy, and they kind of got what they wanted. What I have always praised, I've praised the Democrats for this, that when they get the power, they work in lockstep, right? They passed Dodd-Frank, they passed Obamacare, they passed pile of shit after pile of shit because they know how to corral their people and get the bill to the presidential pen to sign it, right? And we, how. One thing I did, I actually had a concession of sorts from someone I've known a long time, very left-wing liberal woman I've known forever, and going on and on about Roe v. Wade. I said, tell me this, right? At least the Republicans meant it. The Democrats, 3 times in the 40 years of Roe's existence, held the House, the Senate, and the pen.
Yeah.
If this really mattered to them, why didn't they pass a national abortion law?
Yeah.
But they didn't. They liked it as a fundraising tactic about the scary Republicans. Well, the scary Republicans got the fucking votes and did it. But more importantly, all the stuff about women's health. The facts on the ground have changed. 40 years later, technology means that the age of viability pushed a lot further down, backwards, towards gestation. And right now, you can get an abortion sitting at home with 3 pills and a nurse practitioner over the internet. So this whole lie that Republicans are going to restrict abortion, which they want to do, but right? And 20 years ago, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama echoed the common mantra of safe, legal, and rare, right?
Yeah.
That, okay, abortion, sometimes things happen. That's fine. We're not going to throw a woman in jail for something horrible that happened to her. But, like, you got to make a decision within 2 months or 3 months. None of this 8 months. I don't know. That's evil. It's evil. We can't do that. And how the weird left managed to shift the Democrat Party to that sort of insanity. We haven't even touched on the impact of cultural crap for Trump. Most Americans who look at Jimmy, who came in 13th in his swim meet in his junior year and decided suddenly he's Jane and takes away the gold from a young woman who's worked her whole fucking life for this. Most Americans think that's insane. They think that's just insane.
Yeah. So
and I think there's a cultural vote that's going there.
You seem a lot more confident. I'm just a worrier by nature, I think.
Yep.
But there's sort of an intuition, almost a sports thing. Like, nah, you know what? This time it's all gonna fall in line. No. This time we're gonna win it out, and it ain't gonna be close. And I guess it's possible. I certainly hope it is. I am not optimistic. If Kamala were to win,
Oof.
Oh yeah.
I'm seriously concerned. What I find distressing, especially after the last election, coming to this one, if it's close, and moreover, like happened in California, where you went to bed and like 7 of the seats were Republican, you woke up the next morning and suddenly they were Democrat. I think shit like that, if that happens, there's a real chance of serious political violence in this country.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. No one does. But I really, that just, I can't, because I can't think of a logical path why anyone's excited by Kamala Coconut Joy and Tim, I can't load a shotgun waltz.
Well, they think we're Nazis, and that's that.
I guess.
I mean, I haven't broken out my MAGA hat or my Trump flag. I used to have 2 of them on my garage.
Right.
And sometime in January 2020, I boxed everything up and put it on the shelf in my basement. Like at the end of Indiana Jones. Like, it's still.
Yeah. Scenes ever.
It's a fairly forlorn ceremony. I was very Drake. So if we're Nazis and whatever they do is justified, of course, it could just be, well, it's something I used to argue about with, the Brexit and like all the negotiations. I just kept saying, oh, just walk away. Nothing will happen. Just say, all right, we're out. Pick your date. I don't care. We're out. We'll deal with whatever hurdles you throw.
Yep.
We're the 7th largest economy on the planet.
Right.
Just walk, like Lord Humongous in Mad Max, just walk away.
Just walk away. Fully quote in a Brexit context. Absolutely. Yeah. I just
complete wankers and useless political
what's so insane is that they've painted themselves into this untenable position, right? I watched the Brett Kavanaugh lynching circus.
Oof.
And it angered me so much, I watched every minute of it.
Yep.
And I watched Democrat senators act like evil assholes, persecuting a man. They knew none of this was true.
Yeah.
This bimbo couldn't remember the year. And as a woman I knew said, listening to her testimony, right? Even if everything she said happened exactly as she said it, it's like she said, what I'm hearing is 3 drunk teenagers fumbling around. One thinks it's not funny and it's over in 40 seconds. That's what I heard. I didn't hear she's in danger of her life. I didn't hear they're trying to rape her. Even if you believe everything she said, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they went after her. Kamala went after her, and who was that asshole from Jersey with the Spartacus bullshit? All that crap. And the only credit I'll give any of them, Cory Booker, the only credit I'll give any of them was Amy Klobuchar, who looked nervous and unhappy at the role she had been given. And she's the one that asked the kind of the most benign questions of Brett, but still doing her job to try to keep him off the court. But the rest of them were like wolves to bloody meat, attacking this nice man whose daughters, for the rest of their lives, will live with 30 to 40% of their country believing their father's a rapist.
Yeah.
All because you couldn't pass a fucking national abortion law when you had the pen, right? You had the pen then. Obama was the president. You could have just done it, or before that, right? And I watched all that, and then Joe gets anointed to be tapped, and that serial loser Stacey Abrams starts screaming, "Well, your VP." Someone said the VP pick has to be a woman. Well, at that point, the only choice was Amy Klobuchar, who I don't agree with her politically. She's a Democrat, but she's rational, right? She's a JFK Democrat. I think workers should have better protections and rights. I think capitalists are evil pricks. Traditional Democrat, right? And so Amy, for a brief moment, was likely going to be VP because she was the most capable of the bunch, and she actually had votes, unlike Kamala. And then Stacey Abrams showed up and started screaming, "Well, it better be a woman of color." And within a day, Amy agreed to toe the party line. If you go back and search for her kind of like talk after that, endorsing someone else, you can see the look on her face like, this is ridiculous. I'm the most qualified candidate. I have electoral votes.
Yeah.
I can't have it because I'm white. Are you kidding me? This is where we are. But I was thinking, Amy, you signed up to the party of DEI identification politics. You signed up. Guess what? This is the price. And of course, Stacey, in her delusional world, thinks she was going to be the choice, right?
Yeah, I remember.
Right? Oh, she really believed her loudmouth who's lost everything.
They were doing a joint interview, Stacey and Joe. And I don't know if you saw this, but you can see she's waiting for him to ask her, and when he doesn't, you can see the air go out of the wood. It's hilarious.
And if she's lost everything she's attempted, that's the arrogance.
Yeah.
That I should be vice president. You've never been elected to anything. Anyway, she was ridiculous. But then, of course, they tapped Kamala because she was the choice. And she's now the candidate for president. She's never received a single fucking vote from her own party to be the presidential candidate. And from a structural standpoint, as an American who's raising children who are watching this shit show, this is not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
If they had all chosen her, if the Democrats loved her, and they loved her during her vice presidency, and she achieved lots of great stuff, okay, but she didn't. She's a colossal ranked failure. And they're trying to jam her down our throats as the goddamn president of the United States. It's appalling. And why more Democrats don't believe that's appalling really, really worries me deeply. Beyond this election.
Yeah. Well, that's how we've gotten to this point. With the Kavanaugh hearings. I mean, I was furious. I was ready to punch someone's lights out over that, and they keep escalating, and they never learn. And I wouldn't be the first to point out with the Supreme Court nominations, like, you made these rules, and here we are. There's no filibuster for Supreme Court justices, and McConnell rammed through Amy Barrett like 3 weeks before the election.
Yeah.
And you guys decided rioting was okay.
Trying to put Trump in jail because he's not a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. It's sort of, I don't know what to say about them anymore. They can't just lose. They can't just say, "Oh, we lost."
Oh.
They haven't accepted a loss since 1988, and even then they tried to say, "Oh, well, Bush went, told the hostages, to Iran to hold the hostages," and That's how you get 2020 with Republicans saying, "Oh, okay, so this is what we're doing now. We're going to riot." And it was
After 2016, I traveled for work a lot, so I'm in a lot of foreign countries a lot. I was in at least 6 countries, and Hillary was chasing me around the planet, where she was speaking at public events, telling foreign audiences that she's actually the president. Apparently, if a Republican does that, you should be arrested and flogged, right? And so she's busy doing that. And then, oh god, again, how did they get to this point? Can they clean house? If they lose this time, hopefully resoundingly, maybe it'll be time for reflection. Maybe we shouldn't go about things this way.
They don't do that though.
No, they don't. They don't. It's attack, 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 attack. And yeah, I don't get it. How anyone I've seen a lot of, especially black commentators and journalists who've been talking about this. They're like, you're whatever the statistics are of a given neighborhood, how many young men are in jail for, like, they got caught with a rock of cocaine, right? Whatever. It's stupid. These insane laws. And then a lot of them are like, who was the champion of that criminal reform when that happened? That was Joe Biden. Right. So I've seen a lot of them talking about that. I'm like, you're talking about the incarceration rates. You're talking about the growth of for-profit prisons. You're talking about all that. You know where all those sentencing laws came from? Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Crime bill. He did it. Right. And so I don't know what it takes for them to quit this insanity. I really don't. But when they went up to Kavanaugh was like a signal moment, and I watched that. And I'm like, can they go any lower? They find this flaky woman. That no one else has any recollection of any of this. And then that one lunatic with the Italian surname, the lawyer from L.A., who later went to jail for tax fraud.
Oh yeah, Avenatti.
Who trotted out these like 8 women are like, I was raped at a gang sex party with Kavanaugh. What are you talking about? Yeah. That was just insanity. And the fact the media gave them airtime. Chris Cuomo had 2 of these women on his show with Avenatti, who were claiming they were tied down at a frat party at whatever Ithaca, wherever the hell Kavanaugh went to college. And Brett raped me. I mean, the fact that the Democrats gave this shit airtime was crazy. So
yeah, I mean, we had crazy stuff in the Republicans in the 90s. We just, didn't believe it. And, I was in Washington in the 90s, all the Hillary, shot Vince Foster rumors. And, right. And remember that? Jeez, that's another planet.
I remember all that craziness. That was great stuff. But anyway.
Just personally, I woke up on January 21st, 2001, thinking, okay, well, Bush is in. Boy, hating Bill Clinton probably wasn't worth all that mental energy. And I sort of learned, I think a lot of Republicans did. So I think we really hated Barack Obama. I don't think it was ever like what the Clinton stuff was. That became a thing. It just never got as big.
Yeah, he was just smoother. I hate the man. He destroyed more businesses. That I know. I was on Wall Street when they passed Dodd-Frank. The stupidest, most pointless law that was just a pent-up, wet dream wish list of leftists that had nothing to do with the government-caused housing crisis.
Yeah.
Right? They manufactured the crisis. They destroyed the world.
Oh.
Then they blamed Wall Street for it. They passed a law that destroyed thousands of jobs and hundreds of businesses for no reason whatsoever, much like the before that, Sarbanes-Oxley, same thing. They see the Democrats, they see an opportunity, they seize the chance to shove a wish list of bullshit down the American people's throats, and the Republicans, when they get into office, don't then just repeal it all. We could have first 2 terms of Trump, we could have repealed Dodd-Frank, Sarbanes-Oxley, Obamacare. Just do it, repeal it. Done.
Well, they didn't want to, because
they didn't want to.
That's when I really started to believe all the uniparty talk.
Yes,
Paul. That's when. The first time I really snapped was in 2015, because there was a budget, and McConnell, and I guess it was Paul Ryan. As Paul Ryan by then, I think they just caved.
Caved.
And
They caved for no reason.
and there was a teletown hall, and for my congressman, it was Leonard Lance at the time, who's not in anymore. And I really just like, what do Democrats didn't cave when Bush was president. Why aren't you guys fighting? And that's when I really started thinking, okay, you know what? I don't think they care about this. I don't think they mean it.
Oh,
That's when, because
yeah.
Democrats won the House and Senate in 2006. And guess what? Spending went up. They got a lot of what they want because Bush had to compromise. And you had the Republican establishment during Trump, and they didn't want to do any of this. They were perfectly happy to have that regime.
Yeah. Madness.
Yeah.
Madness. So, well, William,
Yeah.
thank you. This is fabulous. I gotta come on again. We'll talk about the Clinton Bush election
Oh God.
specifically. But for
Yeah.
now, any closing words for my audience? What should they be on the lookout for aside from knowing that their Democrat colleagues are going to vote 7 times, so they should at least vote once?
Like electorally, what should we be on the
Just general
lookout for?
thoughts.
Well,
I
there's
don't know. Trump went on Rogan. I called his staff and told him to come on Messy Times. He went with
Yeah.
Rogan instead. Tactical
he looked
mistake.
great, didn't he? I caught about
Yeah.
half of it. He was fantastic.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Um,
There's a leader who is not afraid to work without a net and answer any question you got. Whereas Cackles,
Joe Rogan.
yeah, fantastic. And Cackles has answered any question, and she knows nothing. Oh, I came from a middle class coconut tree. What?
Yeah. As far as there's a big Trump sign here on Interstate 287 in central New Jersey. I do see Trump stuff popping up finally. I think a lot of people have been waiting. There's a guy down the road. I have a picture who turned his whole yard into a Trump display. He did that in 2022. Is half of me believes all the prognosticators and pundits are wrong, and it's really going to be a quick night. And guess what? 2020 was a quick night till about 10:30. Right? I read about this. A friend of mine, we were messaging. I was like, "Wow, Florida's gone, Ohio's going. It's going to be over by midnight." And then that's the moment. Like, we're closing up shop tonight. And at no point did I think they'd be able to stop it. So I was never. It was, but man. So tough. Maybe
I did like 2016 when they had to throw them out of the Javits Center because they had another event booked.
Yeah. The funny thing, 2016, I went to bed. I didn't even follow it. I watched. I think I binged like Third Rock from the Sun, and I went to bed about 10:30, and I woke up about 4 a.m. And I had my computer set because I know I wanted to tell me it was on Drudge, and I'm like, oh my God! My wife thought there was a fire or something. She was furious. Thinking what to expect election night. Old enough that I have no idea. I wouldn't dare. But I would not discount the possibility that it'll be quick.
God
for
willing.
Trump. Well, it could be for Harris too. CNN had a bunch of polls out today showing she's winning 5 points in Michigan. I don't believe that, but someone's right. Someone's right. Someone's wrong. Maybe CNN's right, but I don't know.
Where's the thrill? I don't care what people do in their personal lives, but like, she fucked the Mary mayor of San Francisco, 30 years her senior, to get into politics. She has failed upwards at every opportunity. And when she asked the people to vote her in to the next stage, they didn't. So everything she has tried to do at the higher level, it just shows you can make it all the way to the U.S. Senate without anyone really challenging you or asking probing questions if you come from the right state, right? And there's somewhat more scrutiny, especially if you're a Republican, they're trying to find a problem with you. But the fact that the media went right along with this, like they used, at least some of them, like Woodward, Carl Bernstein might even still be alive. Like, are they spinning in their easy chairs in their graves? Like, she wasn't elected. She wasn't subjected to the Democrat Party process. They crowned her.
Yeah.
The way they crowned Hillary. And Joe they crowned too, but he happened to win, or they stole it. But I don't see a way. Let me put it this way. If this is the America that truly elects Kamala Harris as president, I will end my days as an Israeli citizen.
Yeah,
I don't care
I
there's a war
agree.
going on.
It's over. If I really think, and maybe I don't think I'm giving into hyperbole, but well, what I think if Kamala wins, that really would fundamentally change things very much for the worse. But two, if the Republican Party can't win in this environment, they should get out of the politics business. It's time to, and come on, you're right. The fundamentals all favor Trump.
Oh,
And I'll
even
say it
even
again.
who he is, right? I mean,
You know,
someone was asking, well, about Kamala. They said, you understand. I would elect a rabid, gerbil, Wiccan serial rapist over Kamala.
yep.
Like there is no choice. There's not a decision here. So maybe if people believe that, maybe if you've got TDS, maybe you believe that, and you'll
Yeah.
vote for an incompetent prostitute over Trump. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Yeah, I don't care what people do. I think prostitution should be legal, but
Yeah.
let's at least be honest about who Cackles is. Um, can you imagine? Just last point. I have to put this out. Doug Emhoff. Can you imagine if Doug Emhoff were married to a prominent Republican woman?
Yeah.
We'd be hearing about Can Slapgate 24/7,
Yep.
all day long. That
Yeah.
you're harboring and protecting a woman beater. He slapped a woman in public. Crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets.
Yeah. Maybe the media environment has changed so much that all this bad stuff is finally filtered out there. The problem is that's what at least a lot of us Republicans and conservatives thought in 2004, or with the emergence of right blogosphere, and we thought, oh, we've finally done it. We've cracked it. We've cracked the media, and it's going to get better.
Silence.
And we sat there resting on our laurels, like, oh, look at Rothergate, and the left just left us in the dust.
Yep.
And have never caught up.
No.
But maybe this time it's all filtered out and people know about stuff like that.
I hope.
Maybe.
Remember Me Too? Me Too
Yeah.
was every woman who ever claims any man looked at her wrong was a guilty prick who should go to jail forever, until that woman showed up and said Joe Biden groped me in the halls of Congress, and then it all disappeared. Overnight, all disappeared. Gone.
Yeah.
Alyssa Milano, who'd been bringing code pink bitches to bang on doors in Congress, ended that day. That woman made that claim about Joe Biden. Ended all over. All of a sudden, women are on TV. The girls in the view were going, well, we have due process in this country. We don't lynch people for accusations. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I living in the 72-hour ago past when all you did was lynch people without evidence?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say one last thing about various political and poll positions. I mean, if it was reversed and the polls were showing this for, Kamala, I mean, I would be like, this does not look good. Yeah. And you really have every right to feel cautiously optimistic at this point, and maybe more so, but it's just, son of a gun. I'm 51 years old. For once, I want an easy election where it, doesn't have to be a wipeout, but just like, there goes Michigan.
That's the mandate.
Yes, for once. That's to be like, once. I mean, my best moment at this point is really like 2004. That's the last time I stayed up and followed all the returns and doing really innovative things like going to the Florida Secretary of State website and watching them come in. People didn't know you could do that.
Sure. Maybe election night, getting towards the end, we should get 3 or 4 guys on.
I really want to be doing something else election night. Wednesday.
Go do something else. Anyway, William, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious to hear the reactions we get.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
You bet.
Okay.